Everyone, welcome to tonight's Dean Obeidallah Show on Sirius XM Channel 127, Monday, May 17th. I'm Dean Obeidallah, and my show tonight, we're going to open talking about what's going on in the Middle East. The Middle East conflict to me is not something thousands of miles away. It's something that's been with me my entire life. Now, my dad is Palestinian, was born in Palestine, and my fiance is from Haifa. She's Palestinian, but an Israeli citizen, and her family lives there. So I see this conflict from two different places. From the Palestinian side and from the side of Israeli Arabs who live within Palestine and what their life's about. And that gets almost no press. Look, there are no winners in this battle. Neither Hamas nor Netanyahu are going to be winners. It's only pain and suffering. Sadly and tragically, on the Palestinian side, it's far, far worse, but there's still loss of life on the Israeli side. 10 Israelis have been killed so far, including a 5-year-old child. On the Palestinian side, right before we began, it's up to over 200 Palestinians killed, nearly 60 children killed. Just Saturday night, 8 children killed alone in one airstrike by the Israeli military. It's not at all the same, but there's still pain and suffering. There's no doubt about it. It's not a competition. To me, it's always about what will bring us closer to peace, and a real peace, a just peace. And here is what's going to play out. I can predict right now, unless something changes. In a day or two, we'll have a ceasefire. In a day or two from then, the headlines will shift and those covering the Middle East will fade. The world will go back to its business and the Palestinians will be forgotten again. That's the normal course. And then what happens is in a year or 6 months or 5 years, you have an uptick in violence. People go, what's going on? If you want to see that end, if you believe in human rights for all and humanity and equality, the United States of America, in its leadership role under the Biden administration, needs to engage, not look away, but address the question of Palestine. Look, it's 2021. It is long overdue that Palestinian Christians and Muslims are treated with equality, have security, safety, and a homeland. Again, 2021. The occupation of the West Bank and Gaza and East Jerusalem began in 1967. I have cousins of mine who were over 50, who are around 50 and under, who were born into military occupation in the West Bank, lived their entire life under it. That's outrageous. The world allows us, and we are supporting it, the United States of America. So by having this relationship with Israel in terms of alliance and in financial support of $3.8 billion, we need to use that and leverage that to be consistent with our values. It's actually in the best interest of Israel as well. If you have a just peace, it could lead to security. Will there be extremists? There's always going to be extremists on either side. But if you can marginalize them enough and people in the middle live their lives and thrive, that's what you hope for. In America, we have extremists as well. We saw them January 6th. We saw Donald Trump embolden them. Doesn't mean we are free from extremists in America. We are not, but still we live our lives. And, growing up, my dad would talk to me about Palestine. He was born in the 1930s in what was then called Palestine. It was under the British mandate. In 1948, the State of Israel was created. But my dad talked to me about it as a child. It was not politics. It was more about what was going on there, daily life of Palestinians. I would hear it from my cousins who came to visit. Checkpoints that deny personal self-determination, not national self-determination, personal. Your ability to go to work, to go to school, to go to a doctor, not controlled by you, but by the Israeli military. My grandmother, my Palestinian grandmother's land taken from her by Israeli extremist settlers, and a settlement is built there now. She was never compensated. She was, in the eyes of these settlers, the wrong religion at the wrong place, so she loses her land. And, through my childhood, through until recently, there were really no politicians, a handful at best, here or there, that would speak up about Palestinian humanity. And Palestinian humanity is not anti-Israel. It's pro-Palestinian humanity. Yet some want to silence us. But thankfully, that all changed in 2016. Bernie Sanders, during the presidential campaign, 2016, the highest ranking elected official I've ever seen, speak of Palestinians, of dignity, of their equality, of their humanity. He still recognized Israel has a right to exist and to defend itself, but he talked about the Palestinian humanity. That's something we've not heard before. And now things have really changed. In the last 2 weeks, we had 25 House Democrats send a letter to the Secretary of State in the Biden administration denouncing Israeli settlers trying to steal Palestinian homes in East Jerusalem. We just had on the floor of the House a few days ago a really diverse group of members of the House speaking about Palestinian humanity. You had Congressman AOC was there, Ayanna Pressley, you had Cori Bush, Mark Pocan, Maria Newman. The list goes on and on and on. Congresswoman Omar. It wasn't just the squad. It was growing. And they were talking about the humanity of Palestinians, about their daily life, and what needs to be done after this is over. If you stand for equality and humanity, when this war is out of the headlines because of a ceasefire, and I pray the ceasefire happens today, so no more lives are lost, it's got to start. And what would that look like in terms of peace? Well, I don't think you can honestly hope for a broad peace agreement right now. The leadership's not there. I mean, to be fair, on the Netanyahu side, he really can't talk to Hamas. I mean, unlikely. And on the Palestinian side, in the West Bank, there's no partner for a Palestinian state on Netanyahu's side. Benjamin Netanyahu, the prime minister, has said point blank in 2015 and repeated, there will be no Palestine on his watch. Let me repeat his words. There will be no Palestine on his watch. He said that. He's also talked about annexing big swaths of the West Bank, so there's no chance for a Palestinian state. So there's no chance. This delusion that the only talk that could be two states, that's not going to happen in the near term. What we can do is lay the groundwork for a just peace, or that we can be trusted by both sides. And what that means is no more one-sidedness. It's approaching it equally. And then what it means in the short term is the U.S. administration standing up for Palestinians who have lived for generations in East Jerusalem against having their land taken by these ultra-nationalist extremist settlers. It's funded by groups in America, actually, to steal their land. And you've got, in the West Bank, you have, as the Human Rights Watch and B'Tselem, and B'Tselem is a Jewish Israeli human rights group, has said it's an apartheid situation in the West Bank, even within Israel. And they mean it from a legal point of view. The idea of actual policies that Israel has enacted, both within Israel and in the West Bank and Gaza, that are putting Jewish Israelis by law above Christian and Muslim Arabs and Palestinians who live there. So that's really the essence. There's more to an apartheid. We'll talk about it more on my show today. But it's standing up against that. That's the kind of stuff that needs to be done now. And you know what? The Biden administration's got to leverage our $3.8 billion we give to Israel, to this administration, to encourage change. That means no more settlement building, no stealing of Palestinian lands, ensuring that Palestinians have freedom of movement in the West Bank, freedom to dream of a better life where it's not cruel to dream because you can't control your own future, which is what my family goes through today in the West Bank. So that's my hope. My goal is peace. Is it going to be two states? Is it going to be one big state? Is it going to be a federation? That's for the people to decide. I always thought two states was a great solution to this, but the Israelis over the last few decades have built so many settlements in the West Bank, it almost makes it impossible for a contiguous Palestinian state in the West Bank. Maybe they can uproot some. Maybe you can have a Palestinian state there. I really wish the Palestinians could have their own sovereignty and have their own state. Then Israel has their own state right next to it. They could trade together. They could work together, be like EU. They could really do a lot of great stuff together. But we're not close to there. Right now, we need a ceasefire. The suffering of Palestinians right now is off the charts. And of course, you have Israelis who are scared as missiles are shot at them. We can't deny the humanity of either side. So on my show today, we'll talk about it more. I'm going to hear your reaction to what's going on. The fact the Biden administration has vetoed 3 attempts at the UN Security Council putting out a ceasefire call. Is that consistent with your values? Is funding the Netanyahu administration consistent with your values? We'll talk about that and more on my show tonight, live 6 to 9 p.m. on Sirius XM channel 127. I hope you'll tune in. Thanks for tuning into my